Hey guys, Brian Hunt here, H Visual Media. I want to show you guys in this video a really cool thing you can do with the GH5 that I think a lot of people are not using, and it's a cool tool. You can create these awesome animated GIFs like these ones you see here going on. It'd be a really cool way to do a profile shot, a headshot for yourself that looks a little bit different than just a static headshot. So we're going to show you guys how we use our GH5 to create these videos. The GH5 itself will process it in camera like it does with the time lapse. You can change how fast you want to do it, 8 frames per second or so. And we're gonna have some fun with that and create some cool things showing you how to do that with the GH5. We're using simply the GH5. I have a small HD focus monitor on here. And first, to get our shot, to get our composition, what we want to do is switch our thing over to just the photo mode, because it's going to be a little bit easier just to set your exposure and all your things that way when you're taking the photo. And remember that it's also taking a raw image. So it's also taking a raw image if you have it set to do raw, which I recommend. Once I get my exposure set up, then we go in and we're gonna change the settings on here when we bring it back to the time lapse on here. So when you're in here, it's gonna say, you get into the time lapse mode, it's gonna say time lapse or it's gonna say stop motion. Okay, so if you change over to stop motion, it's going to give you a little bit of options here. You can do auto shooting if you want. So if you wanted to shoot stuff yourself, if you put auto shooting on, you can change your intervals in between each shot. So if you want to have 10 seconds, if you want to have 20 seconds to reframe or whatever you're doing, we're going to take off the auto shooting so I can set up stuff a little bit more. What you can see here is that if you look down there on the floor, we just put some tape down, so some gaff tape down so we can know where their feet are so they don't move too much. You want the person to really not move too much. You know, it's going to be not these crazy drastic moves. You can really play around with it and do whatever you want, but for us, we just kind of want to have kind of head staying in the same place, hats being put on, maybe doing some other movements and stuff and some other expressions, and we're going to shoot it that way. I'm going to take a photo now. If Davey is to put on a different hat, I'm going to turn the monitor here so you can see it. So as you can see here, what it's doing when Davey moves back in there, this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying the onion skinning, meaning it's showing you an opacity of the image from before. That's really what makes this feature work well on the GH5. Other cameras don't have this. You want to do this with the A7, A7R, something like that. You can make an animated video that way, but you don't have this onion skinning and this built-in thing, and you can't process it in camera. So what we're going to do now, we got Davey got his hat on. I'm going to do another photo here. So one thing to think about is how we're going to have that video play back. And a lot of times for a stop motion or an animated GIF, you want it to be kind of jumpy. You don't want to be smooth. We don't want to be shooting that 24 frames per second. That'd be a lot of images to shoot for this. We've set this when we're going to process it for 8 frames per second. That gives it a little bit more of that jumpy look. And it also helps us that we don't have to take tons and tons of images, because you need to get at least 3 seconds or longer for Instagram for that to be a video, for it to post. Getting quite a high shutter speed. Reason for that is going to help me with camera shake. So having an external thing for a trigger for your camera can help if you're going to have a lower shutter speed, because you don't want to have any issues with the camera moving and bumping and stuff like that. That can cause some issues when you're doing a stop motion like this as well. So if you're doing it outside, you're going to have some differences between exposure sometimes. So sometimes the light's going to change a little bit, the sun's going to go away or go behind a cloud. So you might get a little bit of flicker. Not a huge deal in some situations. You're just playing around with it and having fun. But doing stuff in a more controlled lighting situation like we have here and having some lights up to help you with that is going to help minimize that flicker. So if you look here, we have this little number there. It tells you how many shots we've taken. We've taken 35 shots. And if I go to here, it's going to say end stop motion shooting. We're going to say yes. We want to create a video. We want to create a video now. We are going to do that in post as well. We're going to create the video. I'm going to show you how to do that in Photoshop. But we're going to say yes to this now. Okay. And then it's going to come up. We're going to make sure we unplug our HDMI because it's going to take that to the monitor. And then here it's going to tell us what we want to do. So we want to do a record quality, what we want to have it come out as. I wanted to have it to finish as 4K 24p. And then you can change your frame rate here. So this is where I like to show it as a cool kind of slow, an animated GIF thing where it's moving a little more jumpy, and that's why I'm doing the 8 frames per second over, say, 24 frames per second. So 8 frames a second, and then we're gonna go okay. We're gonna say okay. It's gonna compile the movie. It's gonna do it very quickly. Okay, and then we can look at it right here. So it's doing the full frame, so you can see it square. When we bring this into Photoshop, we can reframe of how we want it to look. But if we see here. Okay, so now we're done with the process of taking all the images that we wanted to capture with our GH5, and we're going to jump onto the computer behind me. I'm going to show you the process that I use to create these animated GIFs or animated videos, stop motion videos. One for how to use them and upload them for Facebook. For that, you need to upload a video. The video needs to be more than 3 seconds for Facebook or for Instagram for it to be allowed as a video. I do that through After Effects, so I'm going to show you that on here. And the way I create an animated GIF. So if I want to use this GIF and embed it on a website as a headshot or something, then I can have it so it's just repeating as an animated GIF. They load very quickly. I do that through Photoshop, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So let's get right on it. This sequence here is stuff that I shot with my daughter. There's some photos I want to take out, some I want to change, and I want to make these look a little bit better within Lightroom, and that's why I use Lightroom here. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to start off with the first image of my daughter here, and I'm simply just going to bring her exposure up a bit. I'm going to bring the whites up. Let's bring the white background up a bit. Maybe I'll bring this exposure back down, tweak the highlights a bit. So you can see here, I didn't do an amazing job on the lighting on this thing, on my exposure. We did this kind of quick as a demo. But if you spend some more time setting up your shot, those initial photos, bring it into your computer, take a look at it, see how your sharpness is, see how your exposure is. That's really going to help you in the end part of this. So for this looks pretty good. We're just going to copy that. I'm going to select the rest of the images here. Okay, so I've processed all these images here of Olivia now. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export these all as JPEGs. So from here, I'm going to go through, I'm going to select all these images. Okay. And I'm going to go File, Export. Okay, I'm going to see where I want to choose, where I want to do it. I'm going to send it to my hard drive. Okay, and then I want to then make sure that everything is the right sizing. I want it to be the naming file of it. I want it to be a JPEG, and I want it to be at 100% quality, and that's perfect. Don't want to change anything. I want it to be at least 300 pixels per square inch. And there we go. I'm going to hit export. You're going to see up here it's exporting 33 files. Okay, so now we've processed our images through Lightroom and we've exported them to a folder. We're going to open up Photoshop, and within Photoshop we're going to go down to in File to Scripts, and in Scripts we're going to go Load Files into Stacks. Okay, then we're going to browse to where our images are. This is the folder I made for Olivia, and these are all the images. I'm going to highlight those, and I'm going to say Open. Okay, we're going to open all of these. It's going to bring up the first image, and then it's going to take a little bit of time for things to process through, and all the images, you can see the little spiral thing there. Now it's loaded all these as layers on the side here, and you can see a timeline thing on the bottom here. If you do not see that come up, you can go to your window, and down in Windows you'll see a thing for timeline. If that's checked off, the timeline will not appear. If you need to turn it on, go down and click on timeline. Okay, so from within here, then we're going to click on frame animation, and you're going to see it's just going to add, all you're going to see here is one of the images over here being added. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go here to this little tab over here, and we're going to click on here, and then from here we're going to say make frames from layers. So basically it's going to tell it to take all our layers and make those into frames. Okay, so we're going to do that, and you'll see all our images that came up here as a frame. Now you can notice here it's playing in reverse. It's doing the last photo first and the first photo last. So a way to quickly change that is to go back over here and just go reverse frames. I'm not sure why it does that, but it seems to do it every time I bring images in. Okay, so here we can say how long we want each frame to be on screen for. Okay, so I'm going to play around with this. Sometimes this can be different for what you're doing. I'm going to say 1 second per frame. Now, if we do a quick calculation here, if we're playing back a video at 24 frames per second and I have 33 frames, then we're only going to have a second and not even a half. So we might want to play around with doing some different exports. You know, maybe I'll change these as 2 seconds on these. So down here, you'll see this drop-down menu is telling the animation what it should be doing when it's exporting. Okay, do we want it to be a one-time, just going to animate through this once, or do we want it to be looping? Do we want it to go forever? So we want to click on forever because we want to have that embedded into a website and have that going forever as an animated GIF. Okay, so once we've clicked on that, we're great. Then you can do a preview of your piece here. And you see it's playing through kind of slow, so I might change these all. And this is actually playing through the speed that it's going to play back at for us. So click on all these, make it look like it is half a second for each one. And let's play through now. So what we're going to do here to test this out, we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Export, we're going to go Save for Web Legacy. Okay. Save for Web Legacy is going to bring up our window here. So now we came in and we've selected GIF. We've changed our colors to 256. We are making sure at the bottom here that we have the animation set to forever. And here we can change our output size, okay? Because this is going to be, right now it's a full size of what this is. It's quite big. I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller. I'm going to make it 1,000, okay, for times 563 to make it take a look and see how that looks. And again, we can always re-export this to see how it looks a different way. So then we're going to go Save. Okay, so now I've exported that and I want to take a look at it and see how it looks. See how it plays back, how it feels. Does it need to be quicker? I think it needs to be much quicker for it to look really cool. So I'm also going to play it back in a window. But this gives you an idea of some stuff you can do and play around with. I'm going to speed this up quite a bit to make it look much better and quicker when it's animating. So I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to go onto the first frame, back to the last frame, and let's change this to 0.1 second. Okay. Then we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to export this, export for legacy, the same process as we did before. Let's try to see what version 2 looks like now in our, and look at that, way quicker. It looks much cooler. And it just keeps looping like this. I think really this is how you have to play with. You have to make these things look longer and do them this way to make them as a great animated GIF. This way you're also kind of hiding some of your imperfections when you're doing this stuff by making it go so quick. They're harder to pick up on, that her head's not always in the exact same place, and the height of her and the way she was sitting in her chair when we did this. But it looks really cool and really fun. And that's a great one. I'm happy with this. So that's the basic process I use through Lightroom and Photoshop to create an animated GIF and to do some experimenting with that to see how it can make it look as best as it can. But you can do some really cool stuff with animated GIFs. You can embed them on your websites. You could have them as your profile picture on, say, on your website. You could maybe, instead of that being a still image, you could have that being a rotated animated GIF, which looks really cool and different. But right now I'm going to go on to After Effects and I'm going to show you how to use After Effects to make an animated video from these still images you've taken, to use that as a Facebook profile picture or an Instagram post. And it's a pretty cool process of how to do it through After Effects. Let's get on it. Okay, so now we have After Effects open, and what we're gonna do here is we're first gonna bring in our files. So you can do this a couple different ways. You can take the same way you've made the files work through Lightroom for Photoshop when you've made things into a sequence and things are processed out as JPEGs, and you can bring those as a JPEG sequence. Another way you can do it, if you don't want to skip the Lightroom step and you don't want to do stuff in Photoshop that way, you can also just, what I've done is I've made a folder of all the raw images, and I'm gonna bring in this sequence of just all the raw images from the GH5. I made it into one folder because when we bring a folder over into After Effects, it reads it as an image sequence. And as you can see here, it's a cool thing, because it's a raw image, it brought up image raw. And so it defaults to the very first image that in your sequence, in the series of photos that you have when you import it as a image sequence this way. And you can manipulate this image, and then it will do that to the rest of the stuff in the image sequence. So I'm going to bring up my exposure quite a bit. Here we go. I'm going to say okay. And that brought this in as an image sequence, okay? So the next thing we want to do on here is we want to click on here and we want to interpret the footage, okay? So we're going to go main here, and it's telling us it's right now the footage is at a 23,976 frames per second. I only have about 33 images here. I want this to play slower and look more jumpy, more like a stop motion effect. And that is kind of, you want it to be around 12 or 8 frames per second. Let's make this 12 for now, okay? And now I'm gonna make a new comp, okay? And I wanna make the sizing of this like a square video for Facebook or for Instagram. So I'm gonna make it 1080 by 1080 pixels. You can see that here, okay? Now I'm gonna bring this down onto the comp. It's gonna be massive on top of it. It's a huge image, so I'm gonna shrink this way down, transform the scale down to, say, let's bring this down to 50%. Let's go a little bit smaller and maybe a little bit bigger. I want to cut out that top of the backdrop I could see behind me. Okay, now it won't play through this on my computer smoothly yet, but you can get once this stuff kind of buffers, an idea of your animation here. Okay, so now it's buffered through. You can see here we can play this back. It's moving super quick. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to change the animation, interpolate it again, and I'm going to bring it down to 6 frames per second. Then I'm going to bring this down here onto the comp. Again, let's transform this to make it a bit different size, a bit smaller than this. Now we're going to buffer through this again. Okay, so this is the comp playing back at 6 frames per second. What we changed the thing to. I like this a little bit better. Again, this is something you can play around with, seeing how fast things are playing back, and it's going to loop this way. So what I'm going to do is check on our comp. So your comp settings here, and I'm going to check my duration here. So it's 5 seconds the way I have it set up right now. And what you want to do is make sure your final video you're going to output is at least more than 3 seconds long. If anything is under 3 seconds, Instagram won't allow you to post it as a video, or Facebook won't let you to upload it as well. I'm going to change this to, 10 seconds and 20 frames. Okay, and then if I make this smaller here, you can see, and then I would just simply copy and paste another version of this over top of each other, put it in here, and then I would take this here, trim this back to the last frame, and then I would trim to work area, and then I'm just going to check my change here. There we go.
and then I have a 10-second video. So if you had one that was only 2 seconds and you need to make it over 3 seconds, you can do the same thing. You can duplicate it and making it that way so it will loop the video. So we're going to show you here. We're going to then go to add to render queue. Within the render queue, we're going to change our settings. So QuickTime, we're going to change our format options. I'm going to change it to H.264. Okay. And we're going to say okay, and everything else, we want the sizing all the same. We're going to hit okay with that, and then we're going to pick our output location for this. And then I'm going to hit render, and it's going to go through and render it. Okay, so what we're going to do here is check our export here, see how this plays. Okay, now if we are to upload this to Facebook. Go into Facebook here for uploading this to Facebook. Let's go up to photo video, and I'm going to go to my video animation there. Click on this, open. I'm going to share this. Okay, so now you can see on Facebook I made a post, and this video is now looping. Okay, so it's cool. It's kind of doing an animation there. But I'll also show you on Instagram how it looks as well. And so now you can see on my iPhone I have airdropped the video over, so you can see it playing in my camera roll. So then you can see this video is on my Instagram account now as well, and it's just going to keep looping over with the way that Instagram plays their videos. It's going to keep looping and looks really cool and different over a lot of things that are on Instagram, so it catches people's eyes quite a bit, and it's a great way to use your GH5 to create these stop motion animations.
Okay, so that's the end of this tutorial on how to use your GH5 to make a stop motion animation. Hope you guys liked it. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and a like. Please think about subscribing to my channel. I'm going to have a lot more content coming out. Little tips like this, and also on my series called The Gear Garage, doing reviews of different cameras that I use in my own production, and also looking at different cameras and things that I'm looking at investing in and lighting and other equipment that way. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you on the next video.